Hello, hello. Making sure that all the sounds are going. Hello, hello, hello. Oh, gotta put it out on Twitter too, right? Oh, apparently Twitter is blocking stuff, blocking from me posting things. Pick the dice pair whose top sides add up to 14. Darn it, I went to public school. 6, 7, 8, 6, 12, 15, 6, 10, 4, no. 6, 6, and 2. That one looks right. How many of these do I gotta do? We will be going in momentarily once I prove to Twitter that I'm not a bot. That one. X4, nope. 11, nope. 8 and 4, nope. It has you pick dice. Like there's 4 dice in out of 6 pictures, there's 4 dice, and you have to count up which dice has the tops add to 14. Ridiculous. I mean, I can guarantee you ChatGPT is not having to go through this right now. 6, 6, and 2. That one. Oh, got one more. Boom. Boom. Got it. Wait, why do I gotta do this again? I already did authenticate. That one. I mean, at least I'm getting really good at counting to 14, right? Yeah, we'll talk about our project once I get to validating through Twitter's picking a dice thing. I'll probably turn on my light. Hold on. Oh, wait. I don't remember how to turn on my light. Control center. Boop. Look at that light. I'm so much brighter now. Oh, I was trying to set it to 41%. That's why. Do 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 do. All right, I got one more. One more. Hopefully. Boom. Let's continue making my account. Did I actually make the tweet though? Oh, I did. Okay. Sweet. All right, all right, all right. Yay, Chris Bridges. Boop, 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 boop. It's the Bridges fan page. I need to move to studio mode here so that I can fix stuff and you can still see me. Right? Yeah, you can still see me now. Let me see if I can get control audio. Okay. Let me try one more time. Hold on. Let me pull up. Pull up Stream Elements. Stream Elements. Gosh, that's so tiny. I can't see the. Here's all my. Can't see my text message. Hold up. Hey. I will figure this thing out in a moment. Your patience. You. Restream. Figure this out. Hold on. Hold on. You just be patient. Ah! I really hope I didn't just lose everyone. Authenticate. Just Oh, there we go. Okay. Hey, look at that. I can see stuff now. Let me cancel. Whisper on my channel. Uh, okay, hold on. Closed. That's fine. Reply. No. There we go. Really. All right. Or just say something again. If you still dare. Here. There. Sophie! Okay, I can see you now. I got the chat. The chat is there. All right, I want to do one more thing here. I'm going to do... Hey! Did you actually hear that on the stream? 4-second delay on chat. Okay. Yeah, that's about normal because I'm going through Restream. I don't know if you can see. There's a potential chance that there's a little icon up here in the upper right-hand corner that says Restream on it. Sometimes it will be, sometimes it won't be. Apparently, I am really loud. Kick me down just a bit. There we go. Drop me about 2 decibels. Yeah, that's a lot better. Okay. Go back to intermission. We remove studio mode. Then let me go. Okay. So now that we got things working and there is an actual like alerts and stuff up over in this area right here stuff. Tonight we're going to be working on a little bit of refactoring and making an existing program better than it currently is. So we currently right now really should probably drop this down even more. Sorry, I'm going to have to up your volume here. Let me test that a little bit more. There we go. Okay. So I currently have a Discord bot that is called MVP Custom Discord Bot. And what it does is that it takes an Excel file from a company called MVP, Maple Valley Plastics, who is a disc golf company, which you could not tell, vastly into disc golf. It takes their custom file and reads it and then outputs any of the updates from that file. So the reason for this program is initially because when MVP produces updates on their custom file, it allows you to be able to purchase either less or more discs with custom molds or custom weight or custom plastics in various setups of each of those three. And they don't publish those at all to anybody. So because of that, you need to constantly download their file each day and update it or check and see if it's been updated. So there's a date on it, and we'll go through it when we start up again, or when I go to show you the code base. There's a date on it, and with that date, you can tell if it was updated on that day or not, or when the last update was. And then based on that, you go through the list and you can see, hey, all of these disks have been updated since, or all these disks are available as of today. So where we currently stand, and I'm going to pull this up over here, and then I will show you. Yeah. All right, let's go. And here we are. All right, so we got a Discord bot here. Shrink this just a little bit. There we go. And you'll see the code in the background, which is fine. But so we have this bot, and what it does is it will download the file. So let me go pull up the file for us. It is going to be here. Okay, so this is the file that we download each and every day to make sure that we have an update. And the new hold on, Chris. For you. Session data, subscriber. I gotta do it over here. Oh no, that updated. Okay, never mind. We're good. Because it doesn't think that a subscriber is a subscriber. It thinks that a subscriber is a member. And you're not a member, you subscribed. So it is what it is. Okay, so this is the file, and you'll notice up here there is a cell that tells you what the date is from the last updated. Now, this is an old file. It's a file that I have gone through and I have thoroughly tested and is actually in the testing portion of the code. So we'll show you that in the future. But this is kind of what we're looking at. So we have a date here of when when it was updated, and if they updated that day, it will be that same day of that day that it was updated. And then if you scroll down here, we have different plastics and different molds. So that the upper left-hand corner of each of these dark boxes is the plastic. The numbers across the top here are the weights of which those plastics come in and the molds come in. And then the white ones on the left-hand side here are sometimes blue. Those are the molds that they come in. And you don't necessarily need to know all of this about all that, but that's generally the file that we're going through. And basically, the way that I'm processing this is I come down and I start on line 53. Because as of right now, there's nothing that MVP is doing for this Excel file that starts before 53 that I am concerned about. So we start there. We pull out the plastic name and all of the weights associated to it. I figure out what the index value is for that first weight column here. And then when I go down to the next line here, I'll say, okay, octane is the mold that I'm trying to make or trying to get. Go to that first index of a line. So in this case, it would be column G. And is that cell white? If not, it goes to the next one. The next index of the first index of a weight. Is that one white? No. And it continues on over and over and over until it gets to the last weight cell. Says, is this white? No. All right, let's move down to the next line. because there's nothing that's available here. So it would come down to Photon and it would say, is this one white? No. Is this one white? No. Is this one white? Sorry, click the wrong one. Is this one white? First column being M here. And yes, it is white. So to me, that says that the MVP fission mold in 145 to 49 grams, 145 to 149 grams, the way they write it is weird. For the Photon is available for custom stamping. You can get it stamped. And that's the way that we process this. Now, some of the difficulties that come in is it's pretty simple to be able to do, this one block here, generally. But there's times when the blocks get split. So in this case, you have this as a plastic, the MVP neutron plastic, but then you also have the Axiom neutron plastic. So they're two different plastics in the same column, or in the same row here, with two different sets of weights. I keep clicking on it. It's a protected Excel file with two different sets of weights. And so because of that, you have two different molds that are for those plastics on each row. And I have to process the anode mold in only the MVP neutron plastics. And then I have to check the Crave ones in only the Axiom neutron plastic. So that gets a little bit more complex there. But generally, it's still possible. And I don't want to hard code any of it, because if they change their thing, then my entire bot breaks. So I want to do it logically and step through it. So I then have to deal with, well, what if this box over here ends before this box does? Well, now I need to tell this one, hey, stop looking at stuff. You're no longer looking at plastics. But this one, I want you to continue going on, especially for this row here, the resistor row. Then we come down and we're like, oh man, I'm starting another row before this one has finished. So let me pick up this plastic with this mold and start on this one. Okay. So then we keep going down and we do this for all of them. And there's some of them that will, again, start somewhere beneath Imprison Neutron and Axiom Prism Proton. There are ones in here that you will see are blue. And there's none in this file, but there are also some that are in yellow/gold. I'm not worrying about those yet. That's a future upgrade for another coding channel page time. But this is the file that we're going through, and we sort through it, and we produce this. So in the event that I download the file, and this gets downloaded every day at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If I download the file and there are no updates to it, so that top upper box we saw, this one here, if that date doesn't equal today, then it was not updated today, and therefore I spit out to my system, there were no updates to the file. And I don't process any further. There's no reason to process further, so just don't. If there are updates to the file, that's when we go through the rest of the process. So if it was updated today, then it goes through the rest of the process. And that's where you get this fun little thing here. This says the file has been updated. I provide a link to the file from the website, so it will automatically go and download that file for you if you click on that. And then from the latest one, not if you go back to earlier ones, it will not download the earlier one for us. Not something I'm concerned about because I don't care about later ones. I only care about current ones. And then it gives us this beautiful embed here depicting the mold, or excuse me, the plastic, the mold, and then what weights they come in. So that is what I have developed thus far. We also have testing that has been built into it, so I can test through a file, and if there's a file that gets produced and this embed just looks incredibly broken, I can re-download that file, put it into my testing platform, and then run through the tests so I can see exactly what it is that's going on with that file and why it's broken. But what my next thing that I want to do, which is specifically today, is the issue that if we look at this embed here, all right, this is the latest file that has been produced. All the other ones as of the last 4 days have not been updated. So on the 24th was the last update. But if we look back a little bit further, you'll see on the 19th, there was also an update, right? So if you look at this really quickly without having to write all this stuff down and cross stuff out, and you look at this one really quickly, can you tell me which one actually has changed? Can you tell me which ones have been removed from the custom list? Can you tell me which ones have been added to the custom list? Which ones haven't changed from the custom list? No. And that's that's what I want to work on tonight, is getting it so that we remember what the last one was. I don't care about anyone before that, but what the last molds were that were in the file and available for custom stamping. And then go and check the current ones to see which ones have been updated and which ones have not. Right? That's what we're going to do today. So let's go check out the code. We're going to minimize those. I have my tabs on the left because I have an ultra wide monitor, so it makes it easier that because I have so much space, you can see all this black space over here. I don't need the tabs to be on top because I'm shrinking my page. So I have them all on the left-hand side here. We're going to open up the Solution Explorer, and we're going to walk through the solution a little bit. This is nowhere that anyone can go to. It's not on GitHub or anything like that because I do still have credentials listed in my local settings file here. So I don't want to post that up yet because I haven't done through the security measures for this quite yet. But there are security credentials in here which you could use to then go post to the bot or read from my database that I have as well. The other thing I forgot to mention too is this is a Discord bot. In case you are unaware of how Discord bots process, in case you're wondering, I have my dog in my lap. Show you. Yeah, you love me. In case you don't know how Discord bots process typically. So before this year, Discord bots used to have to be, and they do still kind of, this hasn't gone away, and you'll see that when we get to part of it, but there is a part where we've segregated some of the responsibilities for the Discord bot. Okay. The Discord bot has to be run as a service on some sort of system, some sort of OS, be it Linux, Mac, Windows, Docker, something along those lines. The Discord bot has to be run on there as a service, and if it goes down, back over here, you'll see this little green dot that tells you that it's online and the service is running. If there is no green dot, it will list in offline because it's offline. The bot is offline. So, but you'll also see that there's a bot here that doesn't have a green dot, but it's online. Kind of. And that's where this bot lives. So there's a new system that Discord came out with called an interaction system. And basically what it does is it allows you to, down here in the, move this over a little bit. You can see it a little bit. Down here, if you type in /, you will see what's called / commands. And these / commands can be set up for a bot based on what Discord calls a guild, or what we users typically call a server. It's based on the guild. It can be based on the bot. It can be based on a user. It can be based on, actually, I think those are the only three: guild, bot, and user. And so if I right click on this one, you'll notice that there are no, actually, let me show you one that does have. Oh, there's none of them that have that. Well, if you go to / here, you'll see that there's a bunch of different bots that show up here on the left-hand side, right? We have the Trello bot, which is another one that I've created, and we're not going to go through that today, but it has a action or a / command that that allows you to add a project idea to my Trello board. And I'll show you that at the end of the stream before we go, so that you guys can do, you guys can tell me what you kind of want to see from the stream, and if we want to work on stuff and that sort of thing. So it allows you to add a project idea. Nightbot, which is a very, very common Discord bot, as well as a Twitch bot, has a bunch of different commands here. But some of them are admin-based commands, and some of them are not. And then if we go to Midjourney, which happens to be the AI art processing one, has even more slash commands here to do different things. And some of their slash commands will like send you to their website or that sort of stuff. And then we have the MVP custom checker, which is the bot that we're talking about right now. All this has is a set channel. So what it allows you to do is that the bot currently has a setup that when you add it into a server, it won't tell you anything because it doesn't know what channel you want to tell it to output its things to, what to send all of these updates to here. So what it ends up doing is it just won't produce anything for that channel until you go in and say /set channel in the channel that you are telling it to go to. So if I did set /channel inside of bot interactions, then it will run there. If I do it in bot outputs, then it will switch it to be in that one. So that is the way that I've coded it right now. That is not the best way to do it, but sometimes when you're programming stuff, you want to get a working product out before you continue to make it better and better. It's something out there that's going to work and that's going to prove what you're working on at the moment, right? So if we start out, you'll notice over here in the Solution Explorer, we have, let me minimize this, we have 4 different projects for this solution. We have the custom checker bot. And what this is for is it is specifically actually, let me back up a second. So the interactions stuff for a Discord bot are, for me, run on Azure Functions. I have an Azure Functions call, and it allows you to post HTTP requests up to the Azure function, and it will respond with something based on whatever your request was. So if we look in here, Discord interaction bot or function. So here we will see how this processes. So every Azure function has a run call, and that run call is triggered by something. So here we see that our trigger is a function, and specifically a post function. So I will only be able to post things to this endpoint to allow things to process. Now, you don't know what this endpoint is because you don't need to know what it is. All you need to know is to call that /set channel ID. And what that does is it tells Discord to post an interaction to this endpoint with that /set channel ID call. So it comes in here, and I need to read all the stuff that comes in from the command. Then I need to validate the fact that this command is actually coming from Discord. So I couldn't actually go and just produce this call randomly on my own through an HTTP helper like Postman or REST client or something like that. I wouldn't be able to do that. So this is only allowing it to come through the Azure function. And then if it doesn't come from the Azure function from Discord functions, then there's, with a very specific signature associated to it, then it goes to a bad request result. Just one second, I hear my wife calling. Sorry about that. So if the signature is correct and everything looks fine, then it continues on with the function. Otherwise, it will return a bad request result, which in the programming terms is a 404 response. 401 is unauthorized, 403 is forbidden. I think 404 is bad request. So once I've validated that this is an actual thing that's supposed to be calling it, it continues on, and I get out this Discord interaction from the body of the post. So whenever you're posting a call to a REST client, you always have a body, or most of the time you have a body. And I'm pulling that out and I'm putting it into something that looks like a object that Discord would want to use. Specifically, it is a Discord interaction that comes from D#+. So D#+ is a Discord library for C#. It gives you some like underlying things that can help you with, and specifically in this case, it takes the body of your functions and be able to map it to a class object. We're not necessarily worried what that class object looks like right now. There are a couple of things that we care about, but for the most part, most of it doesn't really truly matter. If it doesn't produce a Discord interaction, or if there's some sort of error with that, it then again returns a bad response or a bad request result. So that I know that the body that was passed in is accurate as well. Then we go into some more of the Discord specific stuff. So Discord has these individual interactions that can take place from a post call. The first one is what is typically referred to as a health check. So certain applications online, when they talk from a front end to a back end, or from a web page to a server, there is a health check that can be made that basically says the front end pings to the back end, calls to the server, and says, hey, are you still alive? If the server is still alive, the server will say, yep, and that's it. It's a very, very simple call. There's typically no authentication or authorization that's associated to it, but sometimes there might be. Just to make sure that you're not overloading the ping result. That is what this first interaction is, called a ping pong interaction. So the front end sends a ping to the server, and then the back end sends a pong back, like ping pong. The next one, and we'll talk about this one a little bit more in detail, is an application command. So that is specifically your / commands, how they process through those things. We'll go into that in a minute. Then you have a component, an autocomplete, and a modal submit, none of which are this system and this Discord bot are reusing. So I'm not really going to go into it. And truth be told, I don't know most of them. I don't know what a modal submit is supposed to be used for. So all of those return back bad request results in the event that those were sent over as the type in the body. However, if it was a / command, and that's what I'm expecting when I receive this call, it will go into this process application command. And from there, as long as it's a set channel name, so I'm looking more into that interaction, the body that we sent over, as long as the data contains a name that is set channel, just like the / command that we had in Discord, then it runs this set channel interaction command, which I've written, and we'll go into it in a second. And if that's the case, then it will return an OK object result, which is just you telling the front end, yes, everything's all right. Here's the data that you're looking for. If it is not a set channel command, I still return OK, because I don't want it to say that anything was bad with it, but I don't know how to process that yet. If you were to send me a /bingo command, I don't know what to do with /bingo in the case of this bot. So I'm just going to tell you, hey, I don't know what that means. This doesn't really make sense to me. And that's what that's what you have here. It will return back to you a message that says there's not an interaction with that name set up. And that's it. And then you can just continue on with your life. But if you did send me set channel, we'll go into that method here. And so what you'll see is a lot of logs, because one thing that you need to make sure of is, especially in Azure Functions, your logging is how you determine whether or not there is an issue with your code or not. It will tell you through the function, and you can run Azure Functions locally to debug them, but I don't like it. It's hard. I might as well just run it in the actual system where it's supposed to be in. That way I can see if there's any actual errors associated to it. So you see a lot of logs here, and all those logs will output in the Azure function when I run it up in Azure. I'm not going to show you all that because I'm sure that if I did, there's going to be some sort of credentials in there that you shouldn't see, and that's fine. But you can just trust me in the fact that these logs do output what they're supposed to output. So first step here is I go into my environment variables, so those credentials that I don't want you guys to see, and I pull out the Azure Web Jobs Storage key. So I use the Azure Web Jobs Storage key to dump this data into where it's supposed to be. With that connection string to get into that database, I create a table client, which comes from our Azure data tables. So any table that's up in Azure, you have to use Azure data tables for. I use that connection string to connect to that, and specifically to pull out the table, the database table called channel. You can make many of them, database tables. You can have one. I only have one right now, but we'll need to create another one for the rest of this bot. But I'm pulling specifically for this thing that I'm looking at. I want to pull out channels. As long as I get that channels table, I then generate the table storage service, which gets me some functions that allows me to interact with that table. And those functions, I believe, are ones that I created. Yeah. So that's going to jump us into a different project. So for now, just trust me on the fact that there is a project there, and it works. Then I pull the channel ID that was used in the call from the interaction. So go to the interaction, pull out that channel ID, and then I pull out the guild ID from that channel ID. So that channel ID, I can go back to Discord and say, hey, I have this channel. Tell me what guild or what server that it's supposed to be associated with. Once I get that guild and that channel ID, I can work with stuff with that. If there is no channel ID that's associated to that, then I have to throw an error because there was an issue. I don't know what guild you're pulling that channel from, and so I can't associate that channel to where I want you to output this data to. And in order to output the data, I need the guild or the server along with what that channel is. And you'll see that later on when we go to post the data there. So with the channel and the guild, we come down here. I output those into a log, so I do know actually what they are before I'm saving them. And then I call into this table storage service, and I set the channel using an async method. So an async method basically says, hold up until your operating system that you're running on has time and available to process this data that I'm telling it to. Once it does have that time, then run, and then return back some sort of value that I need from you, in case you didn't understand what async meant. So I pass in the guild ID, the channel ID, and I have the channel saved. Once it is saved, I return back to it saying the channel has been set. This is the guild ID. This is the channel ID that you've set it for. And that's it. That's how I set the channel that I output to. I can change that output if I want to. When I do this, the set channel async method specifically says, hey, go get me this guild ID. If it exists, then I want you to replace that guild ID with this other new channel ID that you've just posted in. If it doesn't exist, that's what this does here. It deletes that entry, that guild ID and the channel ID, and then it adds in a brand new one. And so long as there's not an error, then it adds it in there. Otherwise, if it does exist already, if it That returns back all of them. Boop, 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 boop. It's been a little while since I looked at this code. I've written it a little while ago. Okay, so what this does is if I have results returned for this guild, so I'm basically pulling back all of the table rows that have this server name in it, and that could have this server name in it, let me put it that way. I loop through all of them, and if that exists, if that guild and channel ID exist together, or if that guild ID specifically exists, then what I do is I go delete that. And if it doesn't exist, then I've just looped through these and it doesn't really matter. And I don't go delete anything because there's nothing to delete. And then now, because it's a brand new, fresh, that guild doesn't exist in the table anymore, now I can go ahead and add that guild in there, whether it existed before or didn't. Now it doesn't exist anymore. I add that guild and channel in there, I add it, and then I return back what that channel is. That is what that interaction bot does for me, the set channel / command. And if you guys have questions, please comment on them. I can go through the questions as you're going through it, or as I'm going through it. If you don't understand what I'm talking about, you can go back and watch the VOD on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, wherever it is that you want to see it. So we went into this table storage service, and one of the things that I told you is that it goes into another project that's in this solution. That project is the MVP Custom Checker Library. Now, a lot of projects that you work with will have some sort of a library that you've generated. That library could potentially be a repository library where you're trying to talk to a database, which is specifically in this case what we're doing. It could be a library where we're talking to another API. So I'm going off to, let's say I'm really big into Overwatch, and there's an Overwatch API that you can query. Or going back to disc golf, there's a PDGA API that you can query. I might have a library so that you can use that library to talk to that API without having to know how all the API stuff is set up and whatnot. You just trust that the library works appropriately. And then technically, the API that you create, if you're creating like a REST API or a web API, is a library in and of itself. It's just not typically called that. It's called the project or the REST API. But if you have a service in between the two, those are typically libraries. A library is basically just a project that isn't the initial one that you're going to run. So because I'm not going to run this MVP Custom Checker library, I can call it that because I'm not going to run it. It's things that help me on the backside. Part of that is I create a channel entity. So this is the thing that gets inserted into the database for me. I have a table storage service, which I showed you a little bit earlier. We came in here and we set the channel ID, right? Well, I can get the channel IDs as well from this service, and I could probably set it up to do multiple other things, but I don't need other things, so there's no reason to make other things for it. That's typically called YAGNI principle. You ain't gonna need it. YAGNI. You ain't gonna need it. We then also have a datetime provider because C# is awful with datetimes. And we have a default one that in the event that I don't pass the default one in, then it just processes that. Hi, wifey. I am streaming. I'll be talking a lot. I mean, you can listen to me talk. They're listening to me talk. You don't. I'm up here working all day long. Do that? Oh, okay. No, there's not. You're right. Okay, so those are the first two projects. Then the last project that we have, or the second to last project, excuse me, is the checker. So we talked about setting the channel ID. Once that channel ID is set, we now have a recurring checker. Here, I told you again that it's a Azure function. Every Azure function has a trigger that's associated to it. This one is a timer trigger. and it uses a cron string. Again, if you don't know what that means, you can look it up, but basically it's a how often do you want this trigger to run sort of thing. And I want it to run every day on the 17th hour UTC. Right now, as far as Eastern Standard Time is concerned, that is 1 p.m. I don't know actually when MVP updates these files. Hashtag learning. I don't know when MVP updates these files, so I just set it to an arbitrary time. I could probably move it sooner so that I would know sooner in the day when that's happening, but I don't necessarily need to right now. So that triggers it, and then we go through all of the information that's here, and we'll get into it a little bit in a little bit. Chris is watching me. Yeah, I can't actually see how many people are watching right now. Wait, maybe I can. There are... Oh, I can't really see how many people are watching. Oh, one is on YouTube. It's Chris. Chris is the only one watching me. That's fine. Because this is being produced so I can show future people that I do know what I'm talking about when it comes to coding. All right, so we have this project here. And again, like I said, it runs the Azure function. And then the last project that we have, which I'll go over before I go over this one, is the testing project. So the testing project does exactly that. It tests things that are within the other project. And this is how we use not having to produce this every single time to be able to go over the code. So like I mentioned, this code only runs once a day at 1 p.m. So if I made a change, I would have to wait again till 1 p.m. in order for this to run, or I would have to run it locally, and I don't know what that's going to do necessarily because I don't like running Azure Functions locally. So instead, you create a testing program and you run certain methods within your program with a set standard of this is exactly what I want you to look at, and then a set production. This is exactly what I think that it's supposed to do. And if it doesn't come out looking exactly like that, then it fails the test. So right now I have, I think, 3 tests. Yeah, I have 3 tests here. The first one tests to make sure that a specific Excel file that we've loaded before, so this one here, which is stored inside of the project, has the correct date associated to it. So you'll see that this date here is 3/20/2023. You'll notice that this test here reads this file, puts it into what's called a workbook, another library that we utilize, an Excel workbook library. And then it says, I want you to make sure that this date time produces a 3/20/2023 date. And so long as this Excel has today's date returns true, which it should, then it is going to assert that it was true. So it makes it to say, yes, this is a valid thing. If I set this to be assert.false, then I'm checking to say, no, it does not have that date, which in this case, it would be inaccurate. It would not assert positively because the date time is not accurate. The next test that we have here is to make sure that channel IDs are being called back. And one thing that you can do for this is I don't want to put these channel IDs into the system. There's specifically 2 types of testings that you want to do. There's unit testing. Actually, there's a lot of testings you want to do, but specifically for more back-end stuff like this, there is unit testing, and then there's integration testing. Unit testing tests small parts of code without ever going outside of that code base. Integration tests test things that go into the system. So to understand it a little better, here we have a unit test which just runs that one function or whatever that function calls. But if it ever decides that it needs to go outside of that function to go to a different system, like let's say a database, it mocks that response for us. So it basically says, if I talked to the database and the database had this data in it, this is what it would return for you. So that's what you see here is this mock thing. And it says, if I ever try to call in this method, get channel IDs async, it will then return this here for me, or whatever the channel IDs are. So when I go into the Excel downloader function, get channel IDs, I say, hey, return for me, or run all of this code, and when it hits that function, return these channels. So I want to make sure that the channels that it is returning is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, 7, 8, 9, 0. As long as those are returning correctly, then the test is passed. The last test that we have here, which is significantly bigger, as you can tell, is checking the file to make sure that all of the molds that are available in that file are returning back appropriately, and anything that is not in there does not return. So again, we read the file, we read that file into a workbook library that's specific to C#, and then we call the get available custom disks method, which we'll show you in a second, with this workbook. And then I take that result and I want to make sure that that result contains all of these available custom disks. And as long as the counts are the same, we're fine. I know that if the counts are not the same, then obviously it did not read it correctly, because it's either adding an extra one or removing or not adding an extra one that's in there. And as long as they're equal, then I'm going to continue on, and I want to do multiple assert. So I want you to run all of these so I know all of the things that are in there or not in there. And I go to check and make sure that the list of actual available disks, the ones that I have up here, for each one of them, that the actual, or that the result list, the one that I'm actually querying from the Excel file, contains this one object. And it does that through an equals method with a hashtag. And you don't necessarily need to worry about how it does it, but it just checks to make sure that there's a that list contains these objects. And if I run all of these, we can go over to our test explorer here. You'll see that there are those three tests that we were just talking about. And if I run all of them, it shouldn't take too long. First, it needs to build it to make sure that the code will actually work if it runs. That's what's happening down here. And now that it built it, it ran all three tests, and all of them passed in almost sub 0.3 seconds. So that's the testing project. So let's get into the meat and bones and potatoes of this. So we have this MVP custom file checker. And like I said, it is an Azure function. It runs on a timer that triggers every day right now at 1 p.m. And I'm going to skip through some of these things and kind of just go over the high level of it, because you don't necessarily need to know all of the inner workings of it, but some of these things you might care about. So first, I pull the configuration file, which is contained over here in local settings JSON. Again, that contains things that I don't want you to see, so I'm not going to show you it. Then it goes in and it pulls the token that I need for the Discord bot. So I told you earlier on that Discord bots need to be hosted as a service running, or as a interaction, or both. So when you are posting messages that are not triggered by a Discord user, then you need to run that service, because otherwise I don't have any way to respond to something. It's just basically posting messages up there. So to post messages from that server bot, you need a Discord token. That's what we have here. And then you'll see also we have our Azure Web Job Storage. So that's the database stuff that we had done earlier. Pulling our channels table, putting it back into that storage service that we had, and then going to call the get channel IDs. Get channel IDs pulls back all of the channels that I need to output this data to, right? Then what I do is I set up an HTTP client. So in C#, the way that you make requests out to the internet is through an HTTP client. Here, I am telling this HTTP client to get something from the website or from somewhere, and that's going to be this Excel URL, which contains the location of that Excel file that we're trying to pull down. So I say, go get it. And as long as you can get it, if you get a success message, which in programming, and a success message is anything that starts with a 2 or in the 200 range. If you look up REST status codes, you have 100 range, which is an informational one. I don't think I've ever seen anyone use that before. 200s are all successes. 300s are all redirects. So if I'm telling you, hey, you wanted to go to this website, you wanted to go to http://www.google.com, but instead I need you to go to HTTPS, the secured version, then I want you to go here. So I'm going to redirect you, or 301 you, over to this other website. Then you have 400 requests, which is you as the user sent me, the server, a bad request, something along those lines. Either you're not authorized to see it, you're not logged in, you are logged in, but you don't have the access to be able to see it, or what you sent me was bad, or anything like that. Hey, Giraffeosubtiba. I do not want any promotion of that because I don't subscribe to that, but thank you very much for that offer. And thank you for tuning into the channel. I don't want, or if you have a 400 error, that means that basically whatever you sent me is flawed. And then the last one is a 500 error, which says whatever you sent me very well could be correct, but there's something internal to the server that's broken. So either the service isn't running, or in some cases you have reverse proxies that aren't running appropriately, or this, that, and the other. The server crashed because of your response, something along those lines. Those are all 500 requests, which is your request was not bad, but the server had an issue processing stuff. So if I get a successful status code in that 200 range, I will post a message to the Discord. Or excuse me, if it's not successful, I will post a message to the Discord saying that it was unable to download the file. Post a message to the log, because again, this is an Azure function, so I want to see in the log that there was an issue with this. And then I just stop running the function. Kick out of the function. I don't need to run anymore because it wasn't good downloading it. And then I can go back through and look at the logs to find out what the true issue was and hopefully deduce it from there. If I did get a successful thing, I take that reading in, save it to a workbook, and I check to make sure that that workbook has today's date associated to it. Okay. This is that first one where we check that upper right-hand box there. This one to make sure that it has the right date. If it doesn't have the right date, then again, I post something to Discord saying no updates to this file, post something in the log, and then I just kick out of the function again because I don't need to check it if there's no updates. And that is what you see here, are no updates to the file information. In the event that there are updates, or that it has been updated today, then we get into the meat and potatoes of stuff. So the rest of this function reads out that I want to go get all of those available custom stamp molds. Once I've gotten them, I create this response message that says that the file has been updated. I output the Excel file or the Excel URL to it. And then I take all of those custom available disks, which look in general like this list of custom disks here that we have. And I group them together by the plastic. And then I return back what that plastic is and all of the molds and weights that they're associated to. Now, thinking about that MVP fission plastic with a photon up there. So that's the first thing that I group by. So I want to have all of the MVP fission plastics that are grouped, that are available in that one group. And then within that group, I take all of the molds and group those together so I can get all of the weight ranges for that mold. And that's where you start to see this here. So you'll see up at the top here, we had the photon, which had all of those molds available to it. Or excuse me, the photon is the mold. All the weights available to it. And that's what grouping kind of does in this system. So I group all those together, and then I go through a string builder, which does exactly what it says. It builds out a string for you. And I loop through all of those groups and I say, for each of the groups that are there, I want you to output what the plastic is. So I'll put this up here so you can see it side by side. I want you to loop through all the plastics. So that's where you get this MVP efficient plastic thing. And then you put a line there. So where this line comes from. And then I want you to loop through all the molds for that plastic. And I want you to output each of those molds with the weights joined together with a comma. Oops. And so that's where you get all these weights grouped together with a comma. And then I output it out to this embed builder, which that's what this internal little thing is called. It's called an embed. Call it the available custom disks, and then I output the description of that embed to Discord. And then I post the message with that embed saying the file has been updated. Bada bing, bada boom. So, with all that said, again, if there's any questions, please feel free to chime in. And we can go through them. We can talk about them and whatnot. I'm not going to go into more of the nitty gritty. There's a lot of issues with like the Excel file having colors that were not where they should have been, or colors that don't actually fit the color that it's supposed to be. Doesn't really matter necessarily. But what we're going to first go check out is, let me put it over here. You're going to start off with looking up C# plus, and specifically, we are going to be looking at embed. So the first step that I want to do embed build. Look up Discord builder. Look at what methods it has here. Ooh, okay. So this is kind of what we're looking at. So we can color our embed, which is great. Because what I want to do is when a mold has been removed, I want to color it red, and I want to put it at the very, very bottom of the page so that I know that it's no longer available. If there is a mold that has been added in that is new as of last time, I want to color that green. And then if it's just been there still, we're going to keep that as white. Now, I'm not 100% certain that I can do with color on individual text. Because I have here description. I'm not entirely too sure that I can color just individual portions of a string, because this whole thing, this whole output here is just one giant string with new lines in between all of them. So first and foremost, what any good developer is going to tell you is, let's go to Google. C# plus color description string. See what we got. If the first page of Google does not tell you it, then what you're typically doing is you don't have enough description, or it doesn't exist, or no one's been doing it before. So that we're going to try newfangled tech called ChatGPT. ChatGPT is an AI. It's specifically the actual description of it is a large language model, and it's basically been fed the internet from the last several years. And so we're going to go hello. Make sure that you say hello, because it is an AI bot. If it becomes sentient, you don't want it to kill you. You want to be the nice guy. I have a C# project that is using B# plus to create a Discord embed. I want to color individual strings for that embed description. How would I do that? There you go. It gives you your answer. Discord does not support directly coloring it. However, you can use a workaround with Markdown. A similar effect by using code blocks, syntax, styling. Like that. So this will give us the green text, and this will give us the red text that we want, right? Use the diff language for syntax highlighting in a code block, which is fine. It can be a code block. We don't mind that. Add a plus or a minus at the beginning of the line to indicate the addition, green, or red as deletion. And then it gives you an example here. So if we got to make a string, right? And then we wrap it in what's called ticks, 3 ticks. We wrap it in 3 ticks here. And then we tell it that it is a diff file. So if you've ever seen GitHub or something like that, there is typically a difference when you're merging certain files together. We can actually go to my GitHub and you can see what I'm talking about here. Go to this. Here we go. Hello, Discord bot. Pull request. Pull request. I have me in. Here we go. So files change. So you'll see here that all of these ones here, because they're green, they have a plus to start with, or they have a plus to start with because they are green because it starts with a plus. They're not removing any, so I don't have any down there that you're able to see that are removed. But that is kind of what we want. We don't want the background to be green. We specifically want the text to be green, but we can make that work, right? Yeah, it basically says if you want anything more advanced, then you might want to use something. So what we want to do then, we don't want to just open this up the floodgates and do stuff. We need to logically think through this. Now, the only way that I can know if something has been added or removed is if I have access to the old data, right? So when we get these molds, I can get 100 viewers for only $0.5. Man, thank you, Staples. No, Chris does not want to watch where to put the printer. They don't. My future employer does not care about where my wife puts her printer. You should definitely buy one. Yes, you do. You'll be getting a lot of candy. Lots of candy. Chris says, laugh out loud. No, that's not liking. He's laughing at you, not with. Oh. Okay. And Sophie's. Now all my future employers know what our neighbors' names are. Thanks. They can hear you. They know. They know. What am I doing? What am I doing? I don't even know what I'm doing. You're distracting me now, and I don't know what I'm going on. Okay, so logical stepping. In order for me to know what has been added or updated or removed, I need to know what previous was. So Chris tells you that you could put the printer over there if you wanted. At their house. Not in our house. I don't think it matters what type of printer it is. He just said you can put it over there. I don't believe that they need a printer. Okay, so logical steps. You need to know what the previous ones are. So first thing we're going to do is we need to save those molds into the database that we're utilizing. But we're not going to save it into the channels one because the channel is dedicated for, you guessed it, channels. So we need to make another here. Let me open up a new window. So first we need to create a new table to store previous available disks. So what that's going to do is it's going to have 3 columns. It's going to have the plastic, it's going to have the mold, it's going to have weight, range, and then we're going to store all those in there. And then the next time that it runs, if there's an update, we're going to pull all those down and we're going to compare them to the current stuff. So the next step after that is step is lose keyboard control. There we go. Compare previous holds to current holds when there is an update. Then the next step is to add into the embed description string to with plus or minus based on added or moved or no preface if, and we'll see how that looks afterwards. So those are the 3 steps that we got to go through. Going to. All right, so we're going to go to break here while we go to pray. And we will be back momentarily. All right. Okay, here's this list of things that we got to do. And first one here is to create a new table to store the previous mold. So one thing that we won't be able to do is, well, actually, we probably can just add in the molds by hand. So we could probably do that. We're going to open up the Azure Data Studio. Before this loads, let me make sure that I'm not going to show anything that shouldn't be seen. Azure. Remember. Add it. Update it later. I need to re-author again. All right, let me find out which one it is that I'm in. Load up the actual page. Under no resources found. Makes me a bit worried. Oh, I'm in the wrong app. Why? One that I'm supposed to be looking in is okay. Now we're cooking. All right. We look in here. Here is that channels table we were talking about before. That has certain things that are associated to it. But we need to create a new table. So we are going to call this available. We are going to add in row. do this together. Yeah. Column. Vector, good for table. Just so pretty. Here we go. Other one. Look at those. Server. What we're gonna do is we're gonna open up side there. Put in thick. Photon. 149. Because I'm doing that and that. Insert it. I don't know how we get a partition key or a row key, or if we even need it. Who knows? Find out later. Let's add again. All right, do this, and I copy 50. Hmm. 154. Did already exist. I don't have a new partition key. So what we're going to do then, instead, delete this. And we know now that I have a last available table, right? We're going to do this called the cheating way, but kind of is. Okay, so we are going to go download this file. We are into this framework. So there's that file, right? Up 24. So then what I'm going to I'm going to go into this test here, and I'm actually going to make a test that is going to call all of the methods that we need in order to save these things into the database. So it's going to force me to create these methods already, and then it's going to save them into the database for me based on the current available molds that are here, right? Okay, so I'm going to copy this, paste it, and I'm going to say save available custom disk. And that's all I'm going to call it, because it doesn't have anything really truly other than that. It's going to be MVP custom 4. That is. Mock that. Read. Get in. Then this is going to get all those molds from it. Okay. We are going to go ahead and delete all this, because I don't actually want to assert on this. And really, all the test is running code for you. The only true end-all be-all is if one of the asserts fails, then it returns a red X inside of the test explorer for you. But really, we can use this test as a makeshift adding things to the database. Make it easy for us, right? So I have the list. So let's assume that all of this stuff is going to work. And I know it's going to work because the previous one does it for us too. So all these things are going to work. It's going to return back the molds for me. Then I need to go to our storage service. So here inside of the table storage service, we have get channel IDs, which is going to pull from the channels table. And actually, we're going to watch a little bit of refactor here. So this table storage specifically works for the channels table. It doesn't work for anything else, and that's why I call it the channels table. Well, when I'm creating a different thing, like last available table, I don't want it to use the channel table. Can't use it to use the channel table. But I also don't want to pass in the channels table along with the last available table. I want to pass in one at a time because I don't need both of them in there. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually rename this to be channels table storage. Also like to rename all those. Make sure that it still builds. Then create new, call it available table storage service. And it is actually going to look very similar to this one. So I now have a last available tables. We can change this to no longer channels table. Name. So when I create this, I want to pass in that table name. And here I want to make a new method called get last available molds. storage service, create panel storage service. Actually, I don't even think I'm using the interface. Yes, am I? No, I'm not. I'm just creating a hard-coded. I probably don't even. Let me just remove that interface. We're not using it as an interface. No reason to have that, truthfully. Going back to the Yagni. So we are going to call it get last available mode. Okay. But I want to bring in panel entity, make a new entity, and we're going to call it last available entity. Going to look again very similar to this channel. Head, we call the last available. Okay. And so this one we're going to take in a tick. Also going to take in a mold, in a string as the weight, and so what this Azure database utilizes is it uses a partition key and a row key to determine whether or not a row is equal to another one. Okay. And so because of that, I need to set those as specific values of some sort. Okay. But I also want to set these separately. So we're going to do a little bit of specialty work. Okay. So we're going to make all of these individual things public string plastic. We're going to make a public string mold, public string weight. And then, as far as partition key, row key, and e tag are all concerned, this is going to be a GUID. So a GUID is it's 24 characters, and it's basically an uncopyable ID. It is very, very, very unlikely that if you create a new GUID, that you're going to have the exact same GUID come up again, because it is a very long string of digits. So we're going to create a new GUID for the partition key. We're going to create a new GUID for the row key. Then we are going to set the plastic equal to the plastic, mold equal to the mold, and then the weight equal to the weight. And we're going to set the timestamp to be frame Okay. And then so if I want to get, I don't need the channel's ID or the server ID anymore. So these are going to be all the new fields that we have, right? E-tag I haven't really gone over yet because, well, I don't know what it truly does. But it's there. And they want me to use it, so I'm going to use it. Okay, so let's go into here, and it's going to my last available table. If I query against it, it should give me a last available entity. Yeah. I then want to pull out a list available. Ooh. Okay, so I want to use this available custom disk here in the last available entity. So when it pulls it out, I want it to save it as the last available disk. But because of the way that the projects are structured, there's actually a hierarchy of project structure in here. So at the top level, you have your functions. So in this case, we have our checker bot, and then we have our file checker. Those are our top level ones, right? Then we come down a level to the testing one, which is a direct child to the custom file checker. And then we have the library, which is our class library, which is a child of both of the functions. So both of the functions can use it, right? In order for you to use in a child library something that is in the parent library, or in this case, the Azure function, you actually need to take that file and put it into the child library, where the parent library will still have access to it. In this case, the Azure function will still have access to it because it says, hey, I want you to get me everything from here. But that child library never points up and says, get me things from there. Because if you do that, you're going to create what's called a circular reference, which basically says the parent says, get me the child, then the child says, get me the parent, then the parent says, get me the child, and the child says, get me the parent, and the parent says, get me the child, and then you run into this giant loop, which is going to end up crashing your computer and or the system. And the system will see that and will call it out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this, I'm going to copy this file, and I'm actually paste it into our child library there. And then I'm going to remove it from the other one because I don't want to use it multiple times. But if I change it, I want it to be changed in one spot and not multiple places. So move this. Okay, so here I now have available this. And for each of the results that I return, so this is each one of those rows that I'm returning from the database, I'm going to call the available disks. So for each of those results, I want you to add into the custom available disk a new available custom disk, which takes in the plastic. I don't know. Doesn't really matter, it's C#, but it makes it look nicer if it's not separated out like that. Which I'm also going to do a skinny uppy. Plastic, which is going to come from our entity plastic. We're going to have our mold, which is going to come from our entity mold. And then we're going to have our weight, going to come from the entity weight. And from all that, we are going to return our available custom disk, which is actually going to be a task of list available custom disks. Okay. So that is getting our last available modes. But really what the true thing is that we want That's going to be part of a later one. But as of right now, for the test, I'm putting these available molds into the system. I need to set our last available molds. Okay, and this is going to take in, actually going to take in an IEnumerable of available custom disks. What an IEnumerable is in C# is it is any type of collection that you can loop over with, say, a for each loop or something that has an iterator associated to it. So any IEnumerable you should be able to utilize a for each loop for. Not all, actually I think all collections, all I collections are IEnumerables, but not all IEnumerables are I collections. And that gets into some weird interfacing message stuff and whatnot. And there's certain collection types that may not need an IEnumerable, but might end up being a collection technically still. I don't want to get into all that. That's a huge rabbit hole, and I don't have an example to be able to explain to you right now, so we're just not going to get into it. So I want to get all actually what we're going to do is we're just going to delete everything out of the table. So we're going to do last available table dot I don't want to delete the table, which is what delete async does. I want to do delete an entity. But I need to get all the entities in order to delete them. Okay, so is I'm going to go delete, get last available molds async. So we're calling the method that we just made, right? With var result. And then we are going to loop through that. So for each var entity in results, I now want to, I now want to delete those. So now I'm going to call last available table delete async wait call, and I want to delete entity dot oh, that's interesting. Okay, no. So because I'm pulling all these results back, it's great for those results. But the problem then is that I'm taking those results and I'm forcing them into another object that doesn't have all the data that I need for it. So instead, I'm going to end up having to copy this, put that there. We're not going to use the available custom because we're not returning things. I just want to loop over this. Then I'm going to do last available table dot the async where entity dot partition key entity dot row key. And I think that there's more stuff that I can do too. If match, cancellation token, yeah, I have either of those. So wait it, just with a semicolon, because that's C# requires is a semicolon. I'm going to do var deleted. What was it? Var delete. Do that. And then, so for each of those delete responses, if delete response dot is error, actually if here I want to do if results dot this needs to be awaited. Not apparently I can't await that there. If it is an error, to throw this, I'm able to delete this, and that's just going to basically kick us out. We're throwing an exception as far as it'll go until it gets caught. But as so long as it's all right, we're just going to keep looping through them until they're all gone. Easy enough, right? Then you're going to make a new last available entity for each var disk in available custom disk. Which, in case you don't know what var is basically just a catch-all for variable. It's saying that this is a variable, and you let the system determine what that variable is, be it a string, integer, Boolean, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You can hard code what that value is, but for me, because I know what the value is already, I specifically know that this is an IEnumerable of available custom disks. And so var in this case is going to be an available custom disk. I don't need to spell that out. It's a little bit more helpful if you're passing around certain objects. You need to map those objects to make sure that it's a certain object, like an available custom disk, but I'm passing the object itself as an object type rather than a custom type. It helps you in those routes, but otherwise you don't necessarily need to. And this is easy enough to be able to know. And especially if you can look back up and say, I'm looking at the available custom disks, or if you can highlight over it and see that it is an available custom disk, you don't necessarily need to add that in there. It's just extra text that's not necessary. I'm going to move this up here, move this up here, and move this also up here. I'm going to do anything with that right now. Put it down there. Don't worry about those red squigglies. We'll figure this out. All right, so for the disk, I want to put disk.plastic mold disk.weight, and then to add in entity. So I'm going to see if there's multiple table dot add. Okay, so then we're going to do again if, in this case we're going to do result is error, unable to add available disk, else want to return panel entity. In this case, we're going to be returning a list of available entities. So if there is an error, I'm going to throw an exception. Otherwise, I want result dot, or no, sorry, I want to create a var added make that a new list last available entity. And that is what we're going to end up returning. So result, or added, added dot add result. Because it's one of the problems copying over some things is that you always need to make sure that you're changing over all of the variable names that you have, because otherwise it makes it very difficult to remember things later on. Okay, so now we have setting all the last available mode, right? And that's all you need to do, hopefully. So we're gonna go back over to our test here, right? And here I've got all of the available molds that are supposed to be added, right? So now what we're gonna do, we are going to whoopsie. That be that towards dot I think it's two field. That's no longer my thing. No, mocked it. But I do need. Okay, hold on. Okay, so in order for you to mock something, you do need an interface. So I'm going to make an I panel table storage service, yes, which is going to be an interface. Make it a public one. And then it is going to take this and this. And then I'm going to tell this that it implements it, right? Then we're going to take this, go back down here, that, to which this, taken that, and now everything should be hunky-dory. Boop, boop, build 460. Perfect. All right. So, test. Right? So, here, now need to. Oh, yeah, let's go over to. Go to here. Or downloader. Yeah. So we go in here. We're just going to make a new method. It's going to be public static list. Available. Add available to table. That's going to take in a list of available customers. This is the issue. What happens when you have your microphone sitting right in front of your keyboard? Sometimes you can't see it. Okay, and so with this, because I want to create public status something, I mean, a configuration root get config. Apparently, pass in what the context is. Execution context. Going to do is here, that. Now I'm changing the place of this so I can use it in other areas as well. So I'm going to get the config, and then with that config, I'm going to generate this here. So we're actually just going to take all of this. I'm going to go back here, and then call cell downloader function dot get config. Config, which isn't going to work because I need execution context. I don't have an execution context. Right. What I'm going to have to do is you know what I can do? This here. So create a the problem that I'm having right now is that the test can't run without having the local settings JSON, which has my key in it for accessing the storage connection string. But in order to get that, I need to run it through the Azure function. But I'm not running the test through the Azure. I'm running it separately. I swear. So what I'm having to do is I'm going to have to actually, because this is going to be a one-time run and then everything afterwards is appropriately, hopefully, I'm going to end up going off stream in a second. And I will end up taking I'll end up doing the build for that, finishing out the test and then running it, and then I'll remove what that key is so that you guys can't see the connection string for it. And then I'll end up coming back next time and showing you that it did produce what I wanted and it's in there now. And every subsequent time, I don't have to worry about it anymore. That's the way that's going to end up having to work. So because of that, Oops, I don't have those available yet. Let's go to the intermission. And so thank you so much, guys, for tuning in, specifically Mr. Chris Bridges, who may or may not have been here all night. I don't know. I don't know if he's still here. Let me check. He's still here. Yep, you're still watching. Someone's still watching on YouTube and Twitch. Again, thank you so much for being here. We can go back and look at these later on. So if you don't remember something or you want to check something out or something along those lines, you can go back through and watch it. And hand wave. And my name has been Tristan Gates. This is Spiderweb Development. And eventually I will be having a Discord channel that you can all join, and you can actually see the bot that we're talking about and any future bots that we end up generating, and we can talk and we can discuss things and whatnot. So once I get that up and running, I will let you guys know, and that will be on my Facebook and Twitter and whatnot. You can see those right there. That's the Facebook. That's Twitter's. I'm not very active on them right now, and truth be told, I'm not very active social media anyways. So if you get something from me, usually means it's important. Yeah, and that's it for now. I don't know when I'm going to be back. Hopefully next Friday. Nope, next Friday I got a volleyball game. So maybe the week after that, because then we're not going to have volleyball games anymore, and hopefully I can stream some coding a little bit more and work on this a little bit more, because I do want to get this done, and I want it to make it look cool and move on to maybe some other projects that you want to see with Discord bots, or maybe other APIs, or whatever else that you want me to work on. So stay classy. Remember, God loves you, and so do I. Peace out.